Tariffs for Mexico and Canada have started. Those new tariffs went into effect today as part of the president's effort to use trade measures to halt the flow of fentanyl into America. Starting just past midnight, imports from Canada and Mexico are to be taxed at 25%, with Canadian energy products being tariffed at 10%. A 10% tariff on Chinese imports Trump imposed a month ago also doubled to 20% today. China now retaliating with additional tariffs of up to 15% on some U.S. goods beginning March 10th and restricting exports to 15 U.S. companies. The 15% tariff will be imposed on products such as chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton. All of these tariffs could impact the consumer, and that is something Senator John Thune is hoping happens for just a short time.
What I'm willing to do is give the president some latitude to try and accomplish the objective he seeks to get done here. I think, as you know, I'm a different place on tariffs probably than some of my colleagues and certainly maybe the administration. But at the end of the day, it's really about trying to achieve the desired result, which, as I said, is very clear in what the president's trying to get done here. And hopefully, when it's all said and done, this won't be something that will create a lot of disruption to the markets in states like mine, South Dakota, where we very much are dependent upon agriculture.
Now, Thune will be present when the president delivers his address to a joint session of Congress. You can see that address coming up tonight at 8 o'clock on KSFY.